tell you a little bit about my story to help you with your story. First of all, Dr. Chamberlain's presentation was wonderful. Having trained many students and still being a journal editor for 2 more weeks, and then I turned the quill over after 6 years to another individual, I can attest to the merits of what he was telling you. Very, very valuable advice. The Chamberlain document, where you talk about authorship, is something that I actually adopted after hearing Dr. Chamberlain give a presentation at the American Association for Cancer Education a number of years ago, and a number of my trainees found it very valuable. And indeed, there may be authorship disputes, but I think this document will bring that to the fore, and that's the time to have those discussions. I once was involved in a multi-center statewide study of neuroblastoma in New York State, and we had mapped out the entire study design, and we had begun writing it when we had a group meeting. And what we decided to discuss, even before we submitted the grant application, was authorship lineup on studies that were going to come out, papers that would be a result of that study. And we sat down, I remember it distinctly, we're in the hospital cafeteria having a cup of coffee. We laid it out, and they said, well, Art, you're taking the lead on this. What do you want to do? And I said, well, I'm going to do the summary study, the summary of our results. And someone else wanted to discuss another aspect, another person, another one. So within an hour, we had decided who was going to publish what and what was going to be the contents. A good follow-up to that is we also agreed that if the individual who was going to take ownership of first authorship failed to submit to us a manuscript within 6 months of the due date, it was fair game. Whoever wanted that paper could assume first authorship. That's also a position me and some of my colleagues take with some of our students, that this is a study. You've got to publish it. You've got to publish it when it's new. No one wants to publish a paper where the data is 5 years old, unless there's justification. So you've got to be current with your publications. And so don't feel bad if life gets in the way and someone else will publish it. You've got to do it, and do it quickly before you forget about it. So anyways, on with my story. So Dr. Solomon asked me to perhaps just share a few bromides with you, and I'm more than happy to share some of my life adventure. We all have a story. You have great stories. We just have a few more chapters in our book than you do, being a little older. And we have a few more scars and wounds called experience. I hope we don't dissuade you from a life in academia. It's a great life. It gives you time to think and fulfill your own curiosity and hopefully help people. And we can't all be physicians and lay hands on and help an individual, but public health has an opportunity to help hundreds or maybe thousands of individuals if we do it right. So who is this old guy up here trying to give you some advice? Well, over the past 40 years, I've had a lot of different careers. You know, I started after graduation on the faculty, a righteous life of academia. I started at Roswell Park Cancer Center. I spent 34 years there. Started on the faculty, then as I like to say, I went over the dark side, went over to administration, all the while maintaining an academic life. Because let me tell you, administration causes brain death. And you want to avoid that. You've got to maintain research. It's the only thing that will preserve your sanity. Then after so many years of preserving my sanity, I went back to the faculty and taught. Ended up at the University at Buffalo, which was affiliated with the Roswell Park. And during my administrative career, I tracked up and ended up as Dean of the Graduate Division of the University at Buffalo for the Roswell Park Graduate Division. So I was responsible for all the graduate scientific training at the Institute. Also assumed clinical training responsibility, allied health training responsibility, oversight for the medical library, continuing medical education. Then, oh wait, they saw a few extra hours and I became director of the ethics review program, and then appointments and promotion. So I was really ready to join the faculty again, where I could just go back and teach and work with students. You know, it's incredible. It's an honor for me to have worked with students all these years. And training now is as it was then. First and foremost, preserve your passion. You're all here because of a passion in international epidemiology, a passion in cancer epidemiology. Maintain your passion. Passion wins out every day of the week. But that said, you've got to have skills. Develop your skill sets. Master your craft. Learn how to write. Learn what to write. Learn how to do your analyses. It's very important, but don't get lost in the analytics. You know, I had another person who worked with me for many years, went on to be a dean at another school, and he used to always say there's two types of epidemiologists. There are gearheads and graybeards. And he didn't even have a gray hair in his head at the time, but there's a difference between those people who really like to get into the minutia and grind the data, and those individuals that like to take a little step back and become a little more philosophical. Know the research. Know the entire picture. Know the biology. There's a biological basis for disease. Know what it is. You don't want to get stuck as a gearhead, grind down your data, and find out, well, it's significant if you consider, and then you've got 8 strata, and you've got 5 cases, and it defies biology. Hone your craft. Know your biology. Be opportunistic. That's a good thing to be. You all are here because you're opportunistic. You saw an opportunity to participate in an international research program. It appealed to you. You took the trouble to put together a highly competitive application. You won out. You engaged on an international level. This is wonderful. You've got to take advantage of opportunities. My life has not been a guided tour. I used to have a shirt that says, life is an adventure, not a guided tour. And it's very true, because you may think today you know where you're going to track over the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 40 years. Let me tell you, it may not turn out that way. But if you are true to your craft, if you do your homework, you take advantage of opportunities, you won't go wrong. I've been fortunate to work with individuals like Dr. Solomon and Dr. Chamberlain for many years. And it's taken me to places that I didn't think I would ever go. Early in my career, I thought I'd join the Peace Corps when I got my PhD. My wife got pregnant. It was a blessing. My daughter's wonderful. I'm happy it happened. But kind of put the stops on that one. So you got to zig, you got to zag. You go a different way. Opportunities came up in my career where I had an opportunity to participate in an international radiation study. You may have heard of Chernobyl. We're doing a study, a 3-country study, looking at the effects of the radioactive fallout on acute leukemias. And an opportunity came up for me to apply for and participate as the PI of the Ukraine. So I spent 5 or 6 years working on that study. A wonderful opportunity that I took advantage of. Dr. Solomon called once and ended up going to Egypt several times, and Oman a year and a half ago to participate in international training programs. One of those resulted in me meeting a student at a presentation we gave in Cairo. I began to talk to her and dialogue via email, ended up being on her doctoral committee, where she did her PhD on breast cancer in the Sudan. A wonderful learning opportunity for me, because the way research is done in the Sudan is much different than it was done in Buffalo, New York at a comprehensive cancer center. So it caused me to relearn new ways of approaching problems. A tremendous opportunity. One day, an individual knocked at my door. Some individual dressed in dress whites. Looked very professional. Turns out he wasn't, but he looked it at the time. He was from U.S. Public Health Service, and he was from a local reservation, American Indian territory, where they discerned that there has been an increase in colorectal cancer. And as he was dragging himself around the institute, he came to me and says, you know, I've been to like 10 different offices here and at the university trying to get someone interested, and they all show me the door. And I said, well, what's the question? So he posed it, and I said, well, that's an interesting question. I'll talk to you. And I ended up talking with the chief of the tribe and some other individuals. And not only did it initiate a study that we did on looking at cause-specific mortality and cancer incidence patterns for a 20-year period, but I continued to work with that tribe for another 20 years. We've updated those studies. I became a member of the Health Commission for the tribe and became associated with many other American Indian tribes through the years doing research and sat on a number of national committees. So again, a knock at the door. I could have just as easily said, get lost, it's Friday afternoon, I don't want to be bothered. But I was. You never know when the next opportunity is going to knock at your door. So be ready to say yes. Be ready to ask the questions. Stretch beyond your comfort zone. I read that once going to a meeting. I was at 30,000 feet in a U.S. Air, I believe at the time, reading their magazine, and I read their one-page business section. And the fellow was talking about how the only way he grew as a businessman was by stretching himself and taking on jobs that were uncomfortable. And I'm going, what's he talking about? So I thought about it for a way, and you know, he's right. The only way we grow professionally is by taking chances. You know, you did it when you enrolled in graduate school. You didn't know whether you'd be successful or not. You thought you liked the material. You took some courses you probably scratched your head over a few times, wondering if you'd survive. But you grew. And you do that professionally when you take on challenges like working in Chernobyl, working with American Indian tribes, coming here to give a talk, whatever it is. It's a bit uncomfortable. And that's how you grow. Because soon you become comfortable. Being uncomfortable is no longer uncomfortable. Then it's time to do something else. Do it for a few years because you're good at it, then stretch again. It's the way you grow personally and professionally. What other bromides can I distill to this audience? I want to hear some questions from you. If you don't ask me a question, I'm going to call upon you to ask me a question. I did that a few years ago. I had the opportunity to give a Fulbright in Poland for several weeks at the medical school. And they assured me that the student body, the entire curriculum was in English. They assured me that the students there asked questions. As Dr. Chamberlain will attest, he's lectured overseas. In some of these European universities, the professor's God, not like in the United States where we get no respect, but over there, they're treated like God. No one ever asks a question because the professor probably won't answer it. He'll just say, pfft, you're in trouble. So I called upon the student to ask me a question. She stuttered, but came up with a question, and that really opened the doors for the next several weeks. And I wish I hadn't asked it sometimes. They ask so many questions. So what questions do you have for me or any of us more experienced individuals in the room? That question? Yes.
How do you devote your life to global research? Because it seems that grant funding projects will eventually end. But how do you make it a continuous lifestyle?
Well, that's a very good question. It's a question that none of us have answers for. I think it builds upon itself. You know, one thing you're never going to run out of in research is questions. There's always going to be questions. And when you're finished with one study, you may have an answer, but you have probably generated numerous other questions. And then you need to pursue that. Pursue the one that is most related. You're building your experience. You're playing on your experience. So you become the authority. Dr. Chamberlain.
Well, one thing, of course, is not to lose your contacts with the people that you know in another area, Vietnam, for example. Now, you may have recognized that many researchers in foreign countries would like to have an American colleague involved in their study. So you can capitalize on that even though you know nothing. You're going to be the token American epidemiologist on this study, but it helps you get your foot in the door. And so with email capabilities now, I actually used to write letters to people, but with email communication, you can keep up with all the contacts you've made. Don't ever lose an address. Remember, your alumni association director will never lose your address. So make certain that you maintain a professional network. And sometime in the future, you may be in a position to contribute materially to studies of people that you worked with when you were a student. I'm now often hired as a consultant by my former students who are now in academic and pharmaceutical positions, and it's a delight to do that. But don't lose contact with people. And you can do it now with reminders on calendars. So send your colleagues at least something in email every 6 months to a year. Tell them a little bit about your career development and what you're doing, and you've passed your comps or whatever it happens to be. That helps them stay up with your current email address as well.
I haven't heard from Bob in years.
We see each other.
That's a very important point, and maintain collegiality with your colleagues. You never know where they're going to show up. There's Dr. Dorn over there who...
You just did my whole talk back then.
Oh, gosh. She knows me from my dark years at the Roswell and the university. You never know when you're going to run into folks again. So be good to them. And when you have students, be good to your students, because as Dr. Chamberlain says, they may hire you someday. So that's a good thing. Any other questions? Well, I'll be around for the rest of the week, so thank you.